take some quiet time and watch this video carefully so you will learn how good this trading tool is to predict and capture the reversal or trend of the stock price movement. And you will also learn what's the chart pattern that will easily capture the $10 or, for example, price increase or movement. So this is a Tesla daily chart, and the right side is the Tesla 15 minutes chart. So today is September 3rd. So today Tesla is opened high, and after some price increase, um, during the prim and the post market. And when it opened around $335, it has a big drop to the bottom support line, trend line in the daily chart, and then it continuously increase to the top yellow trend line in the daily chart. And this right side is the 15 minutes chart. It opened high and much higher than the 15 minutes support trend line. So it has a tendency to go down, drop the price to, you see, to always drop it down to the bottom support trend line and even to the support dot. So in this, I purchased the put option in the early beginning of when the market start, and then exactly close it at the bottom of the daily chart, a daily low. And you see during the next several 15 minutes, it has continuously increased all the way to the top yellow trend line. So you see for each next 15 minutes, it opened relatively low above this green trend line or the blue support line, trend line. So that means it have a good support. It will go up and will try to reach the top yellow trend line. And especially all these trend lines during this several 15 minutes is have a very good uptrend slope. So the increasing trend. So this have a very good beautiful chart that will shows it will continuous to increase the stock price. And then when it reaches to almost to the daily high, and it has some consolidation and fluctuate around that high price. And then, for example, we can switch to a different time frame. For this, the right side is a 60 minutes chart. And after the last 60 minutes, and it just started a new 60 minutes. And you see when it opened for this new 60 minutes, it's opened below this blue trend line, and the right side also started to turn red. So that means it implies it will have a downtrend during this 60 minutes. So it will have a tendency to drop it to the next lower trend line, this green trend line, during this 60 minutes. But even though when it started to drop, it still have some kind of a fluctuation, especially when it try to reach to a higher zone, and the people are still wondering if it can continue to increase. So it's a little bit hesitated to drop, but you see when it opened below this blue trend line, so it will have a tendency to drop it to the next trend line, but it still have some kind of a fluctuation. And this is 60 minutes, and this yellow trend line is also started to bend and started to bend down. So that means it started to have a downtrend tendency, downtrend trend. So and this during this 60 minutes, we can see if it can drop it down to this green trend line. But during this process, uh, during this 60 minutes of fluctuation, it may still have 15 minutes or 5 minutes of fluctuation. So when it dropped down to 15 minutes trend line, when it reaches a support trend line, it may still try to increase. And this is a 15 minutes chart. And you see last 15 minutes chart when it increased to the top, almost to the red dot, and started to decrease. And in this new 15 minutes, and it's also opened below this red line, red trend line, and will have a tendency to drop the price. And but it's still fluctuation and struggling, and you will see eventually it will drop down to this blue support trend line, but it will take some time. So, each 15 minutes, there's maybe like at least 3 or 5 minutes. So some people may take just 20 cents of price increase, and they may just put a large amount of orders and many shares, a lot of significant amount of shares. So even though 20 cents of price increase, they may still get a significant noticeable profit, but that have a high risk. But even though so many people may take some kind of a short time profit even during some few minutes. So if we switch to 5 minutes chart, you can see even for 5 minutes chart, this kind of trend lines can still capture or predict the price movement very well. And you see the previous 5 minutes when it opened slightly below, slightly above this blue trend line, have a tendency to drop and exactly dropped down to the bottom support blue trend line of the last previous 5 minutes. And when it's opened for this new 5 minutes, it's opened a little bit below this red trend line, so it have a tendency to drop down to the next or lower trend line. So even for this 5 minutes chart, it still have a good indication of the price movement, or the even though the high or low even during these 5 minutes. And you can see it's still trying to go up a little bit, but it's still struggling. So for this 5 minutes, it will have a tendency to still go down to this bottom blue trend line, but it may have a temporary fluctuation. So for this, for the whole day of Tesla price movement, it's already moved from the bottom trend line, blue trend, green trend line, to the top yellow trend line. So it increased a lot, at least over $10. So around 330 to around 343, something like that, around $14 or $13 of increase. So you see this new 5 minutes start. You see for this, when this new 5 minutes started, start opened exactly above this green trend line. So it has a good support for this 5 minutes. So it may still have a tendency to increase even up to this yellow trend line, but it depends. So but at least it currently have the short-term support for this 5 minutes. So it right now is trying to increase the stock price, and you see right now it's almost approach this yellow trend line of the 5 minutes chart. But as I mentioned before, so right now it's almost around the high daily high in this high price region. So anytime when it reaches to the relatively high of this yellow trend line for 5 minutes, it may have a risk to drop the price further. So right now you see, and is still trying to increase the stock price. And this is a 5 minutes chart. So if we just zoom it a little bit, and if we zoom out a little bit, you see right now it's almost approached this yellow trend line of this 5 minutes chart. Just now, as I mentioned a few minutes earlier, I mentioned it will have a tendency to increase to this yellow trend line of this 5 minutes chart. And when it reaches to this yellow trend line, it has a tendency, it may still start to drop, or if it have a strong momentum, it may increase to the upper level. But right now, as I mentioned earlier, it's already approached around the daily high. So it's everybody needs to be cautious about the tendency to drop, to have a downtrend. So when it reaches to this yellow trend line of a 5 minute chart, it's started to decrease, and the price started to drop and by a few cents. I mean, at least 20 cents, something like that. For Tesla, I mean, this is a very minor movement for $340 of a stock price. But even for this kind of a trend, I mean, even for us, something like a stock price with a much lower price, maybe like $40 or $100, the performance of this tool is still similar, and you can use the same basis to explain the increase. And you see for this 5 minutes chart, and during this period, the wind opened around $332 and have a very good increase all the way to the around $342. And during this increase, almost like $10, this is a very beautiful trend, uptrend. And all these trend lines of a 5 minute chart have a very good increasing slope, have a increasing momentum and in uptrend. So this is a very good uptrend pattern. And all the 5 minute charts are opened above this green trend line or yellow or this blue trend line, support trend line. So it have a very good momentum. So definitely during this range, don't sell your stock on that. You can hold it. At least you can capture this $10 of increase. And you see it's increased from about $332 to increase almost to this $342. And especially even for 5 minutes charts, when the last this 5 minutes increased to this red dot, and then it started to decrease. And right now it's still struggling around this small price range. And after it reaches that yellow trend line of 5 minutes, it's still trying to push up, but right now it depends. The momentum is much weaker than before. So around, you see right now this is a new 5 minutes when it opened below this blue trend line, and the right side is already turned to red, so it will have a tendency to drop for this 5 minutes. You see right now it started to drop, and it's started to drop, almost dropped to this blue trend line of 5 minutes, and it will have a tendency to drop, even drop it to the bottom trend line, blue trend line, to this bottom blue trend line of 5 minutes chart. And right now, exactly as what I predict or evaluated, it exactly dropped down to this blue trend line, blue support trend line for this 5 minutes, for this 5 minutes time frame. So at least it dropped 40 cents. And you see when it dropped to this blue trend line, it may have a temporary support of this 15 minutes. You see, I switch it to a higher time frame, switch it to this 15 minutes charts on the right side. So you see right now it already reaches to a blue support trend line of this 15 minutes. So when it reaches to a relatively lower blue support trend line, it may have a tendency to be temporarily supported. It may start to increase a little bit more. So you see, if I switch to 5 minutes, you see it started to increase again. And when it starts to increase again, it will have a tendency to increase to this green support line, green line of this 5 minutes chart. So you see right now it is started to increase to this green support trend line, and it will increase to that trend line. So that will be additional, maybe like 40 cents or something like that. So I mean, we don't have to capture all this small or minor movement. We want to capture those large movement. I just use this 5 minutes chart to explain how good this tool is to capture all this kind of price reversal, support and resistance, all this kind of support and the resistance trend line are very effective and powerful. So I just use this short time frame to explain how good it works. So because it will be easier, takes less time to explain it, and but it's the mechanism of using 5 minutes chart, 16 minutes chart, 15 minutes charts, 1 hour, 4 hour daily or weekly. It's basically it's very similar. So as long as you find something like a good, relatively good support, and it will start to increase, and then when it reaches to a resistance and a strong resistance level, it will start to decrease the price. And you see, right now it's almost reaches the green trend line of this 5 minutes chart. And when it reaches to this five green trend line, it will also have a tendency to start to drop again. So basically, you will know when it will start to increase, when it will start to decrease, and basically you will have a very good chance to predict or have a good assurance to know how high it will go or how low it will go or when it will start to increase or start to decrease. So right now you see it has started to increase to this green trend line, but you know from the bottom to up to go when it go up, when it reaches to a certain resistance trend line, it may still have a tendency to start to drop. So you see, right now these 5 minutes have a downward tendency trend for this 5 minutes chart. So when it increases to this green trend line, it already the momentum is already relatively weak. So it may not be able to reach the top blue trend line, and they will start to decrease again. So even for this kind of a small movement, just a few cents, 20 cents or 30 or 40 cents, I mean, this tool can still predict that. And even for that 5 minutes, it will have some kind of a 50 cents of a price difference. I mean, if you have a small, like a lower price stock, like $20 or even $5 of a stock, 50 cents is also a very good ratio, right? So if, just because this Tesla have a very high price, $340, so 50 cents is not a big deal. But you will know how this tool works. And you see the left side, I already switched to 15 minutes chart for Tesla. And when this new 15 minutes start, it opened below this red trend line, so it will still have a tendency to drop. If you are interested in this kind of analysis or prediction, or watch the real-time demonstration of this tool, you are welcome to subscribe Yupin's stock trend prediction channel or watch more videos.